In the country, a great storyteller, a guy who is an immigrant who understands America, and now one of the best documentary filmmakers in the world, Dinesh DSouza, on with us. Hi, Dinesh. How are you?
Glenn, great to be on the show.
It was great to have you. Last night, we had a fascinating conversation last night on the TV show, and you said afterwards, unlike anything we weren't talking about the movie, but yet we are. He has a new movie out. If you haven't seen it yet, well worth the price of admission to see. Something you need to bring your children to and teach your children, because they're gonna run into all of this anti-Americanism in school and in high school and grade school, unfortunately, and also in college. And so it's important that they have the defense against it. And Dinesh has put a movie together where you actually don't do what Michael Moore does. You let these guys speak first.
Yeah, we give the left its say, and they're able to make the case against America, which is really a case of theft. They're arguing that the wealth of America is based on theft. Historical theft, we stole the country from the Native Americans, we stole the labor of the African Americans, and contemporary theft. Our foreign policy is based on plunder. Capitalism is a form of theft, depriving people of what Obama calls the fair share. So this theft indictment is at the root of modern liberalism, and it's a claim on behalf of justice. That's what the liberals are saying, is they're claiming the high ground of justice. So the movie is, it's called America.
So let's go here on the theft. Tell me how we did not, as Abraham Lincoln said, take our bread from the sweat of another man's brow with slavery. How are we not built on the backs of slaves?
Right. So slavery is theft. In fact, Lincoln put it beautifully when he said that slavery can be represented in the idea that you work, I eat. So it's the notion of making other guys work for you for free is a form of theft. Absolutely. But here's the point. This theft has been going on since the dawn of mankind. Remember that America doesn't come into the world. America comes into the world as it is. Theft was already, slavery was here in America. It was actually imposed by the British. When America was started in 1776, slavery was going on. All 13 states had slavery. Now, the question is, what could the American founders do about it? They've got choices available to them. They could have said, we outlaw slavery at the outset. Then the question becomes, how many of those 13 states would have joined the Union? Possibly none. But even if some of the northern states joined, the southern states would certainly not have joined, which means that the United States would not be a United States. You'd have possibly several countries. Slavery might have lasted much longer. So here's my point. When we judge the past, we have to judge people according to the options available to them at the time. We can't ask them to do things that they were not in a position to do. So Lincoln understood this, and in our film, we show the part of the Lincoln-Douglas debates where Lincoln says the founders declared the right so that the enforcement could follow when the circumstances allowed.
I think that abortion is going to be seen 100 years from now. We're going to seem barbaric on that. But I make the case now that even though I think it is the killing of children, the slaughter of innocents, I make the case now to future generations. Don't blame us for it at this point, because the options in front of us, we're not there yet. We're just not there yet. We're trying. We're moving forward. It's the progressive idea. We're taking steps in that direction, but we can't stop it. So when 100 years from now or 150 years from now, they look back and say, look at these people. They were murdering their innocents. Yes, we were. But there were a lot of people that said, don't. And we were doing the best we could. Isn't that the same case to be made for everything that the left says is wrong now?
If you read the Lincoln-Douglas debates, one of the most striking things about them is the way that they mirror the pro-life and pro-choice debate. Let's look at Stephen Douglas. This was the Democrat running for the Senate in Illinois. Douglas goes, he takes the pro-choice position. He goes, I don't care whether slavery is voted up or down. He goes, what I am for is letting each state, each community decide for itself. So he says, we don't have to settle the issue nationally. He goes, let's allow each community to make its own decisions. That's the pro-choice position in a nutshell. Lincoln says no. He says, why? Because Lincoln says you cannot talk about choice without reference to what is being chosen. He says, if the Negro is like a hog, then you can talk about choice of whether or not to keep him or to kill him or to slaughter him. But he goes, but if the Negro is a human being, then the idea of choosing to deny another person choice is crazy.
Right. If
so
you're dealing with evil.
Similarly, with regard to the abortion debate, we keep hearing about choice, but without attention to what is being chosen.
Correct. That's the thing I can't. I know a lot of libertarians will say, I personally believe that it is a child, but you have to give the right to. No, it's like Abraham Lincoln again said, if slavery isn't evil, then nothing is evil. If killing a child isn't evil, then nothing is evil. And it's not a choice you put down on the table.
People will often say, I'm personally opposed to abortion, but I think it should be legal. And then I always say, well, why are you personally opposed to it? And as you begin to flesh out there's only one reason to be personally opposed to it, and that is it represents a form of termination of life.
Right.
That's why you're opposed to it. Well, if that's the case, are you actually saying that that should be optional in a free society to allow people to terminate the lives of others?
Right.
There's a kind of insanity that poses a sophistication, and this is so reminiscent of liberalism across the spectrum.
We're talking to Dinesh DSouza, new movie, America. If you haven't seen it yet, you need to see it. As you're looking now throughout history, where are we? I'm struck by the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, because the last thing they did was open up the gates. Where are we as a society, and historically speaking, have we been here before?
I don't think we've been here before. Certainly America has faced huge challenges before, the Civil War being the most dramatic of those.
Right.
But even in the Civil War, what Lincoln was able to do was to restore the country by appealing right back to the principles of the founding. And I think where we are now, which to me is very odd, I mean, here I find myself, I'm an immigrant, I come to America, I recognize, as all immigrants do, I mean, all the way back to Tocqueville, Charles Dickens, who came to America to see America in the 19th century. Everyone who comes from abroad sees there's something unique going on here. This is a special country. And then you run into the natives, people born here, who deny that and, in fact, think that if there's anything exceptional about America, we're exceptionally bad. And they do that by measuring America by a utopian standard. America's falling short of the Garden of Eden, you might say.
Yeah.
Whereas the immigrant is always comparing America to some other existing country.
Right.
And so the immigrant is always like prejudice, but compared to what? Yeah, there's conquest, but compared to what? Take America's power in the world now. We say that we're using it in a bad way. Well, let's give it to Russia and see how they use it, or China. Are they likely to use it more benignly? This power is going to be had by somebody. If we don't have it, somebody else is going to get it. And they're likely to use it in a far more barbaric and brutish way than we ever would. So in that sense, it seems to me I'm always fighting against an American provincialism that goes by the name of liberalism. But this liberalism ridiculously thinks it's super cosmopolitan, super sophisticated, knows a lot about other cultures, whereas its actual knowledge is close to zero.
Tell me about we had a conversation, I think it was, I don't know if it was on the air or not, where we started talking about justice. And I was talking to you about justice and mercy. And to restore justice, we have to make sure that we guard mercy. If you look to Tocqueville, America is great because America is good. That came from the churches. That means that we had a heart of service. We were serving Ben Franklin's, American religion. There is a God. He's going to judge us. Best way to serve him is to serve your fellow man. That makes us good and merciful. And from there, if the people are decent, honorable, merciful, then our laws will reflect that. Our justice will reflect that. And we'll be able to be free. And you said to me, we concentrate on freedom, where historically, and I was thinking last night, even in our fables, they're just looking for a just king. Explain that.
Yeah, historically, if you look around the world, you find that people did not contrast tyranny with freedom. That is a Western idea. Before, for centuries, when people looked at kings, and most of the countries in the world were ruled by kings, the issue was not, do I have a king or do I have freedom? It was, do I have a good king or do I have a bad king? If you look at all the fairy tales, they're about good kings and bad kings. If you look at the history of Shakespeare's histories, they're about just and unjust kings. And justice is, as Aristotle recognized, the primary political virtue. Young people know this instinctively, which is why young people on the campus care passionately about justice. I despise the conservative argument that says, oh, gee, but give them 30 or 40 years until they grow older and become cynical and have to pay taxes, and then they'll become like us. I don't like that. I actually want to appeal to justice. I want to tap into the idealism of young people. I go back to the American founding, and I see that the American founders were primarily concerned with justice. And if you read the Declaration, it's one indictment after the other. The Crown is unjust for this reason and for that reason, and they're taxing us too much, and they're taking our stuff. And interestingly, freedom becomes a solution or remedy to the problem of injustice. In other words, if absolute power corrupts absolutely, then one solution is to limit the power of the government so it can be less unjust and give people space to live their own life. Freedom becomes a way to temper injustice. And yet freedom remains, in some ways, I think in these political debates, we play the king, which is freedom, and then the left plays the ace, which is justice, and they win.
Do you think that India would be free today because Gandhi played the justice card, he played the Jesus card, he even talked about it. He didn't believe in Jesus as the savior of the world, but he believed in his words as a Nazarene and said, this guy had it down. And so he spoke of justice and peace. But I believe he also understood, unlike Bonhoeffer, who later in his life said, I got to talk to Gandhi. Gandhi knows the answer. This Gandhi guy has the right answer. He's on the right path. But his society was not Western anymore, and it didn't care. Nobody was a guardian of that truth anymore. Where Gandhi knew, if I can get into the newspapers, if I can get it in front of people, they will care, because the Western way of life understands justice. They understand this and mercy. Are we approaching a place in the world where the Western way of thinking is becoming so damaged that we're entering a time globally where those who would cry out for mercy and justice will be more like Bonhoeffer, fighting a losing battle, because there is no guardian to hold that up and say, hey, look at this. Justice matters.
Wow, Glenn, this is a deep and interesting issue. When Gandhi encountered Jesus, he found in Christianity something that stunned him. Hinduism is based upon the idea of karma. Karma is cosmic justice. What goes around comes around. And that's the whole idea of reincarnation. You're a bad guy in this life, you're going to be a cockroach in the next life. Justice. Gandhi understood that. But with Jesus, he came out, there was something unique in Christianity that is in no other religion, which is the concept that there is a higher principle than justice, and that is forgiveness. And when Gandhi encountered that, he realized that is a superior idea. To some degree, it cancels out justice because it overlooks, but it's almost godlike. Mm-hmm. God is the only one who can overlook what the crimes that we've committed, if you will, against him. Now, this is the way in which the Western tradition enriched the Indian tradition. Gandhi didn't cease to be an Indian or a Hindu. He just found something deeper that he could put on top of it. And in the same way, I look at what's happened in India as taking the ideas of the West, democracy, human rights, separation of powers, checks and balances, the idea of modern technology. An Indian entrepreneur said that it's modern technology, Western technology, that will achieve Gandhi's dream of wiping a tear off every Indian face. That's happening now. Now, what you're asking, which is a very important question, is the exportation of the perversions of modern liberalism is scaring the rest of the world, not just the Muslim world, but even the Indians. And the big slogan I now hear from Singapore to Mumbai is modernization without Westernization, which is to say the rest of the world is saying, yes, we do want Western technology, we want iPhones, we want universities, but there are a lot of toxic aspects in Western culture that we would rather do without.
Okay, I got to take a break. Can we pick that up from there? So where are we in that cycle? What happens? How do you reverse that here? Because we're the source of that toxic Western society, but we're also the source of all the good stuff that comes from the Western way of life. So we'll pick it up there. Talking to you can stay, can't you?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, Dinesh DSouza. The movie is America. Bring your kids to it this weekend. Beck. Okay, so we're talking to Dinesh DSouza, New York Times best-selling author. Now, a guy. Have you beaten Michael Moore yet? Have you beaten that record of Michael Moore's?
Well, we just knocked off his film called Roger and Me, which is the film that made his reputation. And this weekend, we will surpass most likely his film called Capitalism: A Love Story. So our film will then be the number 6 most successful documentary film ever made.
Fantastic. When you get to have 9 houses like Michael Moore does.
I'm a long way from that.
I know. But the name of the movie is America, also now a best-selling book, and it talks about the left, and he allows the left to really make their point. There's no strawman arguments here.
You have to really hang on through that portion.
You do.
Because it's Ward Churchill, Noam Chomsky, Bill Ayers, some of the worst of the worst. And you get, but I mean, I loved the movie. So did my wife and both my kids. It was awesome.
I talked to you yesterday about, I don't even know how you did it. Because
I don't
just
know
watching
how you sit
it,
there.
just watching it, and I know the payoff. Just watching it was excruciating. That for those sections where you're talking to Bill Ayers,
it's hard to
and
listen
you're like,
to.
I can't take it. I can't take it. But it's worth
and it's
sitting
also
through.
remarkable that these guys like Bill Ayers, who tried to blow up things 20 years ago, will basically say, "A, I haven't changed my mind. I've got the same views now that I had then." And then they say something very intriguing. We figured out a better way to promote those ideas. We don't do it through bombs. We do it through textbooks. We've become college professors. We write textbooks for very young people.
So scary.
That's the Van Jones thing. We've given up the radical means for the radical ends.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other thing is, you actually ask, I think it was Ward Churchill, if he could condone dropping a nuclear weapon on America. And
his response
was...
His response was kind of yes. But what I think is even more interesting is just watching him think it through. He just sort of says, well, yes, if I do think America's the evil empire.
And he does.
And I do. And if I do think that America's kind of like Nazi Germany, and if it is, then what would we do with Nazi Germany? Well, we'd try to level the place and bring the regime down. And so doesn't it make sense that we would want to do that here?
It actually does
so it actually, once you state the premise, the logic is just following a train to the conclusion.
Okay, so when we come back, Dinesh is going to talk a little bit about the rest of that answer that we were going for here a minute ago on there's a window closing, and we do all have to unite, but what do we unite around? How do we get people to really see the difference of what's happening today?
This is the Glenn Beck Program.
The Blaze Radio Network.
New book and new movie called America, Imagine a World Without Her by Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh is in the studio with us. The film got an A+ CineScore rating, which is remarkable, but you have Jerry Mullen helping you out. And
well, we're thrilled. We're the only movie in the theater that has that rating. You know, even The Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, a good movie, has an A-. And there are only 52 films, I believe, in 30 years that have gotten the A+ rating from CinemaScore. So we're just thrilled to be in the company of, Schindler's List and Titanic and Driving Miss Daisy, movies like that. So I feel honored to be in that company.
And even you Pat, when your kids went, they didn't want to go see this.
No, because it was a documentary. We're like, you're going because it's going to be good and you're going to love it. And at the end, I mean, they wanted to see it again. It's really an excellent movie that the whole family can love.
Okay, so anyway, so Dinesh and I were talking about this this point in time where Bonhoeffer lost the ability to talk to the German people, and I think it's because he was concerned about the church and not the overall human condition at the beginning, and then he is enlightened and gets it. But he could not make any headway at all, and I think it's because there comes a point where people just go so dark, they're either tired of looking at it, they don't think that they can make a change, and so they just start looking away, or they're part of the problem. Where Gandhi knew he could reach out, if he could just get into the Western papers, he knew the heart would be moved. The same thing happened with Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King said, put A and B, contrast, put evil next to good, and Americans will always pick good. I think there's a chance that that is starting to go dark on us. How do you, A, agree with that theory, and how do we make sure that, what's the best way to make sure we don't miss this closing window?
Well, I think, ironically, the best way to have ultimate reconciliation and understanding is to begin with a clear-eyed assessment. So Martin Luther King understood, for example, that there was something dark in the soul of the segregationist. He understood there was something evil there. And he didn't flinch from that. That's the starting point. So let's start with this point. For 30 years, we as conservatives have said that the left is well-meaning, but its policies just don't work. And I said that. But I think that diagnosis is completely wrong. That in reality, we don't see that human motives are much deeper than that. In my view, the primary emotion that drives the left is the emotion of envy. Envy. I mean, think of the guy who's adding up numbers for a living, or who is sweeping office floors. And he leaves his office here in Dallas. He's walking home. He looks into a restaurant. Through the glass, he can see people ordering $40 entrees, laughing, drinking wine, limousines pulling up, pretty girls walking in and out. He goes, what the heck? Why that guy? Why not me? He works hard, but I work hard too. And at that moment, you begin to feel an emotion, and that emotion is envy. Now, envy is not the belief that I want to do better. I should go back to school. I should start a business. Envy is the feeling, I would like to come up, but if I can't come up, I would like to pull that guy down. It's that destructive urge in human nature. It's a very secretive, vicious human emotion, and it's one that is often undiagnosed because we don't admit it even to ourselves. So here's the envious guy, seething with envy, seething with resentment, and who should come to him at this point but Obama? And Obama, himself suffused with envy, will say to this guy, listen, let me tell you something. You're not envious. You are righteously indignant. You know why? Because look at those guys in that restaurant. They've been stealing from you. Society creates wealth, and then greedy entrepreneurs come in and grab it. So here's what you do. You vote for me. I will take the cops and go get their stuff. And then I will give some of it to you. So you have here a dirty bargain by people who are appealing to the lowest impulses in human nature, and it's camouflaged under the banner of social justice. It's ultimately the biggest scam of it all. So if we don't recognize
that's really what vengeance is also cloaked as social justice.
Yes, vengeance. Now, what's going on, I believe, Glenn, in society, there's a huge power struggle. It's not fundamentally ideological. It's a power struggle between the entrepreneurial class on the one hand and what I would call a triangle of people who produce nothing but words. This is the class of journalists, of intellectuals, and of politicians and community organizers. Now, a guy like Steve Jobs can make an iPhone. Now, an iPhone is a wonderful product. You and I didn't even know we wanted one, and there it came, and now we can't live without it. Can Obama make an iPhone? No. He can't even put up a website. His productive abilities are zero. But that doesn't mean he's untalented. He's talented in working up the mob. He's a resentment organizer. And what he would like to see is a transfer of power away from the entrepreneurs, the wealth creators, and toward unproductive, resentful people like himself. And that's the power struggle going on in our society. So once we recognize it, then we can heal it, because we say, look, envy, that's not something that is a liberal thing. Envy runs through every human heart. This resentment, this rage, this desire to compare ourselves to others, everybody has it.
So give me, because if the Declaration of Independence would have started, we think envy is wrong. We think vengeance is wrong. You don't take things from other people. I don't think we would have won. But because it started, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator. Because they started with that vision, so give me the vision that people would rally around today. What is the vision of where we're headed? We're not headed back towards the past. We're headed to America, I don't even know, 3.0. What is the vision? Articulate that.
Well, I think the vision is this, that from the time of the Babylonians, from the dawn of mankind, humans have gained wealth and improved their condition through conquest. This is, in the film, we call it the conquest ethic. It was going on. The Native Americans were doing it. Slavery was all over the world. And look, America was born into that world. The conquest ethic was there, and it's there now. The Chinese believe in it. The Russians believe in it. So what's interesting to me is that the Russians and the Chinese in particular, they've learned from us the ethic of wealth creation, and they're using it to get strong. But they have never given up the ethic of conquest. They never have. And so America represents a new idea in the world, which is replacing the ethic of conquest with a rival ethic. And what is the rival ethic? Self-determination, equal rights, and wealth creation. This concept of being able to create wealth is a remarkable idea, that you can go from 10 marbles to 15 marbles without taking somebody else's marbles. That's what the iPhone represents. You take sand and make it into silicon, and then you use silicon to make software. Who is Steve Jobs stolen from? He didn't take anybody's land, and yet from Elizabeth Warren's point of view, Obama's point of view, he somehow owes some obligation to society because he used the public roads and learned math from an elementary school teacher. I mean, this is downright idiocy, and yet it is the idiocy of our time. So the vision to me is to recognize the uniqueness of the American idea, and which the world is recognizing. And ironically, as the world recognizes the American idea, it's become somehow disreputable and controversial in America, and it's been made so by Americans. So connecting with what makes our society strong, I call it the spirit of 1776. Obviously, we can't go back to being an agrarian society, and we don't want to. But those principles are as applicable today as they were when the founders devised them in Philadelphia.
It is the difference between the spirit of 76 and the spirit of 68.
The spirit of 68, the 60s, I like the early 60s. I mean, when the hippies put on their tie-dye shirts, are you going to San Francisco? There was an innocence and openness in the early 60s.
It really was about love.
It was about love. It was about community. It recognized there was a conformity in the 50s that was stifling. But that then became the Detroit riots and the Chicago riots and the burning cars and the cops are pigs and your parents are evil and then you got Bill Ayers and then you start blowing up the Pentagon and then you start shooting. So all this stuff got out of hand. And I came to America in 78 in the sort of end of the backwash of all that. And I just looked at this whole generation of losers and I said, how can you turn over a great country to these people? You can't. Well, we're 30 years away from all that. But remember that the 60s now is not a separate phenomenon. It lives in each one of us. Gingrich is a product of the 60s, the same way that Bill Clinton is. You are. I am. And so what we're trying to uproot is not us, is not some spirit of 68, but the spirit of 68 in us.
I'm trying to find the spirit of 68 in me. Because I don't believe in that. Are you saying that each of us, I'm a product of the 60s, you're a product of the 60s, and so we all have a little bit of that vengeance in us?
Yeah, not just vengeance, but we don't believe, we're reluctant to believe in an external moral code. We tend to think that morality comes from within, that we create it, if you will, that we are, in some sense, the architect, not just of our own life, but our own morality.
In creating, in looking at a world that is going increasingly dark on religion and the Ten Commandments. I mean, name the atheist that can't give me 8 of those 10 commandments and say that's just a natural law. I mean, we're not even agreeing on natural law anymore. How do you get a culture that is going in an opposite direction? How do you get those people to say, okay, you're right? I mean, Penn Jillette is at least honest enough to say there's a huge difference between the Muslim world and the Christian world. There didn't used to always be that. I mean, it was, we were killing each other like crazy, but there is now. And that Judeo-Christian ethic has actually created some really good things. And a world without Christians, these are his words, a world without Christians would not be a better world. How do we get people there?
That good side of people, just like people's patriotism. I believe that there's a natural patriotism that beats in the breast of Americans. Now, the point is that patriotism has been derided, suppressed. Young people have been taught that part of sophistication is to condescend to that. Just like in Europe, people don't like to fly their country's flag. Why? Because it somehow seems to them low class, disreputable, something that you wouldn't do. That's what the left is trying to accomplish with our young people, is to root out that natural patriotism that beats in the American breast, to teach young people to hate their own country.
I will tell you, Dinesh, we talked about this right after 4th of July, that all of us, I wasn't teary-eyed at the 4th of July. That's a first for me. Wasn't teary-eyed. And it's not because of the past, it's because of the things I'm seeing now in my country that I think my country is wildly misguided on. And I think we are becoming quickly becoming a dark force, and I think that's happening to a lot of people. So how do we protect that? I mean, I don't want to be I don't like waving the flag per se. I like having that love for my country, but I want it to be rooted in something real, not just the flag and the.
Yeah, sometimes I think there is a mistake, which is that we celebrate not only the symbols of America, but we somehow think that the defense of America is just a defense of documents, like it's a defense of the Constitution, which we carry around in our pocket. The Constitution, and Jefferson understood this when he said it's an expression of a way of life. It's a reflection of the sensibilities of a people. We're ultimately defending not documents, but the lived American life, or a lived American life as the founders envisioned it. And it's an American dream that's not content neutral. Sometimes people say freedom and choose whatever life you want to live. Well, let me ask you this. If 400 million Americans decided to freely choose to all become pornographers, would the American founders go, wonderful, this is what we were always hoping for? No. Why not? Because to them, the American dream had content. It wasn't just choice. It was choice to live a certain kind of life. To them, freedom meant family. It meant community. It meant individualism, but also it meant working cooperatively with others. It meant innovation, enterprise, creating wealth. And it meant America being strong in the world. It meant all those things, and that's the America we're fighting for.
Are you, and I know we've got to run, but are you more optimistic or less optimistic than you were 3 years ago?
Well, I'm less optimistic than I was 6 years ago, because I think that the Obama remaking of America is actually happening. Now, he can't do it in 8 years. I think he's going to try to pass the baton to somebody else who will complete the job. But I do think that I'm not giving up on America. I think that America's waking up to this guy.
Do you believe Hillary Clinton is that one who catches that baton?
We say in the film, and I do believe this, that Hillary is that Alinsky is the bridge that connects Obama to Hillary. And I think that we don't know enough about Hillary. We focus on young Hillary. So I'm very suspicious of Hillary Clinton.
You mean you're suspicious that there might be something good in there, or suspicious?
Well, I don't know. I'm suspicious that what we've seen, as with Obama, we've seen an elaborate stagecraft over the past several years, and that the real burning Hillary, the young Hillary that we saw in the early years of Clinton, is very much sitting behind all that, waiting for her chance to get her levers of power.
I really don't understand why more people don't have a problem with Saul Alinsky. If you follow, teach, understand, uphold any tactic from Saul Alinsky, we can't sit down at the same table, because the book is dedicated to Lucifer, for the love of Pete,
and he acknowledges his tactics to learn from the mafia.
I know. I mean, it's just the wrong road. The name of the book and the movie is called America: Imagine a World Without Her. It's in theaters everywhere, and I urge you to take your family to see it. Dinesh DSouza, thank you very much.